Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Thomas, this is Rick and Mark, and we're here talking today about a topic that we all deal with on different levels, the topic of anxiety. We know that anxiety is a part of life that we all experience at different stages. So I've got Mark and Rick here, and I want to ask y'all a question. Mark, what is anxiety, and is there a remedy? Is there a way that we can work through anxiety?
Well, Thomas, I was thinking it's very hard to define really anxiety. I think all of us have probably experienced moments of anxiousness, and like one of the Supreme Court justices of old said, I may not know what it is or how to define it, but I know it when I experience it. And I think, all of us at some time in our life are going to go through a period of anxiety. We're all going to have moments where we're anxious, where we feel like, man, the world is just crowding in upon us, or we just feel like we're getting ready to jump out of our skin, or however it is that you experience anxiousness. All of us will go through that at some time, and it is something that we will all face. But what I have found in my own personal experiences is that there is a source of hope, even in the most anxious moments, and that is through faith in Jesus Christ.
Absolutely. Rick, what would you say about what anxiety is, or how do we find that remedy, work through it?
Right. So we want to be a little careful. We are not clinicians, so we are pastors. So we're speaking this from a pastoral or a kind of a biblical mindset. So anxiety, as we understand it and as we know it, is a deep exasperation, right? Is your mind, your heart goes a bit haywire. There is like a weight of despondency. And we know that it manifests itself even physically. So it's not just simply something in your heart or your mind, like heart rate goes up, blood pressure goes up. The person can actually feel a weight on their chest, or they're having a hard time breathing. So it's incredible if you've experienced a panic attack, an anxiety attack, like I have a couple of times, like it's an incredible physical thing that takes place, and you kind of feel it winding up. And there's not much you can do to stop it. And once it's in full effect, there's not much you can do to stop it there. But we experience, many of us, anxiety at different ways, different levels, to different degrees. And so what is that, exactly? We know that takes place in what the Bible would call the heart. So we read in Proverbs chapter 12, verse 25, anxiety in a man's heart weighs it down. So even the Bible tells us that it's in the heart, which the heart in biblical terms is that inner person. It's kind of like our true self. Mm-hmm. It's not just the place of emotions. No, it's the seat of thinking and volition and our will. It's kind of like who you truly are is your heart. So it's in our innermost being where this anxiety manifests itself. And so getting beyond just trying to define what it is it that is the remedy for it? And I firmly believe, and I'm convinced, that it is a relationship with Jesus Christ that is the remedy to this thing that happens inside of us. And this happens to Christians too, and it happens to pastors even. Mm-hmm. So it's a wrestling where there's this internal war that is happening. And for us, it really is. It's simple. It's hard. Keep your eyes fixed on Jesus Christ. So the easiest biblical story to go to is a very famous story in the Bible of Jesus is walking on water, and then one of his disciples, Peter, says, hey, can I come out to you? And he steps out of the boat. It's in the middle of the night. There's a raging sea that is taking place, so big waves and so forth. And Peter, in faith, steps out of the boat, which is a profound thing that someone would be willing to do that. And then he walks, and it actually says in the Bible that he got to where Jesus was. So whether that was 5 steps or 50 steps, we don't know, but he made it out of ways, actually walking on water. And then it says he looked at the waves and was filled with fear. Substitute depression, substitute anxiety, substitute anger. You can substitute a number of emotions or internal states. In that, usually what I have found in my personal experience is that the moments that I'm most wound up and I feel anxiety really well up It's when I'm looking at my problem, when I'm looking at my circumstances, when I'm looking at the waves of life, and I have taken my eyes off of Jesus Christ in Him alone, that the remedy to these moments of anxiety is, do you know who Jesus Christ is, who is God Almighty? Do you know how much He loves you? Right? He loves you enough to have come from heaven, came down to earth, died on a cross to pay for our sin, that we may have an eternal future with Him, and that He is with us, right? And that He walks with us even now. He sent His Spirit to abide in the hearts of believers. And that the more we just say, no, I'm going to resist the temptation to just look at what is less than ideal in my life. And there is a lot that is less than ideal.
That's right.
So a marriage in crisis, your child is making bad decisions, you just lost your job, you're having to deploy to war. There is a lot of stuff that happens that can wreak havoc on just your emotions. And to have the discipline, or let's call it faith, that in those moments I'm going to look to the love of God and fix my eyes on Him and let that wash over me in such a way that it helps me to breathe.
So what I'm hearing you say there, Rick, is we look at the world and we look at our problems, and sometimes when we do that, it overwhelms us as individuals because they're bigger than us.
Yes.
All those things that you mentioned, they're bigger than me as an individual, but we have a God that is bigger than anything that we face.
Yes.
And it's a God that demonstrated His love for us by sending His own Son for us, so that we have something in that.
Yeah.
So, Mark, what would you say there then about working through this anxiety and the remedies that you've found?
I think that's interesting, Thomas. I was thinking as you were saying that about this verse that's in John chapter 16, verse 33. That's a verse that has really brought me a lot of peace and a lot of comfort. Jesus says, "These things I have spoken to you, that in me you may have peace. In the world you will have tribulation, but be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." And one of the things that I've found is that, first of all, we're either in a crisis, coming out of a crisis, or heading into a crisis. That's the way life is. Mm-hmm. All the time we're in some kind of crisis. And if there's a moment of peace, it's either because we've just gotten out of a crisis or we're getting ready to go into another one. But what I have found personally is something that to sort of piggytail with Rick, that my faith, my God that I have put my faith in, is bigger than my problem. And that's one of the great things that I found in life. The Bible speaks of a peace that passes all understanding. And I have personally experienced that several times. Probably the most poignant moment was when I was standing at the casket of my father as we were getting ready to let the friends come into the viewing. And man, this was like one of the most difficult moments of my life. And right there at that moment, I'm just like, God, it had been such a trying week. It had been such an exhausting time as my father slowly died by cancer. And I was sitting at preparing myself, and all of a sudden, just out of nowhere, I just felt just this peace inside of my heart. That I knew was not from me. And I knew that God was, all these people in my church that had been praying for me, all these folks that have been just asking God's blessings on my family, I felt that presence of God. And I just knew that with God's strength, I would get through that. And what I found is that the God that I have put my faith in is bigger than my problem. Whatever my problem is. And Jesus doesn't say your life is going to be easy. Right, Jesus says you will have tribulation. You can count on it. It's going to happen. But what He also says is that I will never leave you, nor will I forsake you.
That's right.
And it's such a comfort for me to know that in my most anxious moments that my God is bigger than my problem.
Yes.
That's right.
So to quote what is like a very famous text, so Psalm 23, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil. I think it's fair to substitute any other emotion. I won't have depression. I won't have anxiety. I won't have these issues. But the verse tells us why. For you, Lord, God is with me. Right. So, and I think it's fair to say that, even though I walk through the valley of shadow, it makes it sound like it's a hypothetical that may not happen. Oh, no. Like life pretty much from first breath to last breath is walking through the valley of the shadow of death. Like life on earth is the valley of the shadow of death.
Absolutely.
Like in all sorts of ways. And it is possible to live a life where we're less and less anxious, less and less worry, less and less stress. And I say less and less because I don't think we'll really ever get to a place this side of heaven where those things aren't a real trial for
Right.
us. But less and less because we can learn over time that God is faithful, that he really is with us or with me. He really does care, and that like I may be outside a boat and the waves are going crazy and he's right next to me. When I'm sinking, yell out, "Help me," and he's there to pull me up.
Yeah.
And that when I'm walking through the valley, he's right there with me. And there's a courage, an encouragement that happens out of, like, if you really know that to be true, really believe it, it does lift your head. It does let you move on to the next day.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the remedy. That's the solution, that the anxiety that only comes out of hopelessness, there is a remedy because God is our hope.
Yeah.
And if we keep our eyes fixed on him, man, the difference that it makes. It makes all the difference in the world.
Yeah, I know what it feels like to be hopeless because I was not a Christian for the first 24 years of my life. So I lived 24 years knowing something was missing, knowing something wasn't right. I was called out of law school into active duty for Operation Desert Storm. And remember just being terrified by the thought of dying and what would happen to me. And I know the feeling of being scared of dying and death and not having hope. But I also know the difference that Jesus Christ, that personal relationship with God, made, and how having that faith has helped me to walk through the valley, the shadows, and it's given me so much hope. And I think that was a big thing, is that when I found Jesus Christ, I found this thing called hope that I'd never had before. And in the middle of the anxieties of life, there's still this peace that comes through that relationship and that hope that God gives.
Guys, I appreciate your insight so much. If you are dealing with a lot of anxiety right now, please know that there is hope. There are so many resources. Our churches are here for you. We would love to pray with you, do anything we can for you, but know that there is hope beyond the troubles of this world. Thanks for watching.